Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of The Awesome with Cody. As usual, I'm your host, Cody, and today we're continuing May's theme of whatever the hell I called this, awesome sci-fi movies that I watched when I was young because of Star Wars or something. I don't know. I realized after recording last episode, I did not tell a Star Wars story, and I may tell one at the end of this if I remember. Don't know. We'll have to find out, I guess. I don't know. Anyhow, today we're talking about Explorers from 1985, a science fiction fantasy film written by Eric Luke and directed by Joe Dante. Let's get into who made this motherfucker, shall we? So Joe Dante, the director, has directed many great films in his career. I'll just go over a few of them. I'll go over the super highlights. You have Gremlins 2, The Burbs, Inner Space, obviously Explorers, Matinee, Small Soldiers, Looney Tunes Back in Action, and that's pretty much it for the highlights. Television-wise, he's directed a handful of different TV shows. He directed 10 episodes of the new Hawaii Five-0. I know that much. Did an episode of The Twilight Zone back in the day. He did 5 episodes of Erie, Indiana, which is a great TV show from back in the day, back in the wee years of 1991 and 1992. Yeah, and then that's about it. Yep. I don't know what the hell Lighthouse or Haunted Lighthouse is for theme park film, but whatever. Said Joe Dante, he's pretty rad. He produces a lot of stuff too, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, and he likes working with a lot of the same actors over and over again, which I'll get to in a minute because there's one of them in this film because it's film. Eric Luke doesn't have as big of a career as some that are attached to this film. But he has written a couple things. He did a DC comic book series of Wonder Woman. He's written for Dark Horse Comics. And then for movies and television, obviously Explorers, the television show Gargoyles, the television program Ultra Force, and then one of the newer versions of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 2003 and 2004, which were, it was super popular. He made a ton of episodes. He made 7 seasons of it, but he only wrote for the first 3 seasons, I don't know, something like that. Anyways, so that's Eric Luke, the writer. Starring in this film, there are basically 3 main actors, and then 3 lesser known, I guess, or lesser featured actors in it. I don't know how to actually say that. But anyways, the 3 main stars are Ethan Hawke as Benjamin or Ben Crandall. You have River Phoenix as Wolfgang Mueller, and you have Jason Presson as Darren Woods. So Ethan Hawke, you probably know who Ethan Hawke is. He's been in a ton of things. Explorers was his actually first movie he ever did. And then right after that, a couple years later, he did Dead Poet Society, which was a massive hit. And then, he's done a lot of things. Television-wise, he's been on 1s and 2s of episodes of things. Movie-wise, rapid fire here. Dead Poet Society, White Fang. You have Alive, Quiz Show, Reality Bites, Floundering, White Fang 2. Before Sunrise, Search and Destroy, Gattaca, Great Expectations, The Newton Boys, Joe the King, Hamlet, Training Day, Taking Lives Before Sunset, which is a sequel. Technically, is it a sequel or like a continuation? I know that sounds dumb because like sequels are, you have to see those movies to understand. Anyhow, then he has Assault on Precinct 13, Lord of War, Fast Food Nation, just a couple other big ones. Daybreakers, which I'm gonna do an episode on because I'm gonna do vampire movies here pretty soon. He was in the newer, well, he's in a director's cut only of the new Total Recall. That's a different story for another day. He was in the Sinister movie, Before Midnight, which was the third movie in the Before Sunrise, or Before Sunset. No, wait, hold on. So Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight. And I guess they're thinking about doing another one, a fourth one. I don't know. He was in The Purge, the first one. Unfortunately, he died in the dumbest ending ever. Him dying in it wasn't the dumb ending of that. If you haven't seen The Purge, and maybe one day I'll do it because the first few of them are fucking amazing movies. But in The Purge, if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to break down the rules of it because that's for another day. But he dies right at the end, and his wife and kid don't retaliate, and it's infuriating. It makes me so mad every time I think about it, and I'm just getting angry right now. Anyways, then he was in The Magnificent Seven. He had a role in Valerian, the City of a Thousand Planets, but it's a very small role. But Jolly the Pimp, if you watch it, it's an amazing movie. You should watch it, but it's on there. Yeah. I don't know what the hell Cutthroat City is. That sounds rad. He plays Nikola Tesla in a movie called Tesla. Are you fucking kidding me? What is this? They made a second movie about this? What? Jim Gaffigan is in it? As George Westinghouse? Oh my god. That's ridiculous. I had no idea. Okay. That's a whole different venue I have to go down. Holy shit, that's insane. Okay. Anyways, that's Ethan Hawke. You know who he is. Next up, River Phoenix, the short-lived, glorious history that is River Phoenix. For people who don't know, he died at an early age, or not of an early age, but at an early age. You don't die of an early age. Well, I guess in a way, you kind of sort of did. Anyhow, I'm not going to get into that right now. His first movie also, Explorers. Then he did Stand By Me, The Mosquito Coast. A movie I don't think I've ever heard of is Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon, which I don't know. I think I know of anything. He did Running on Empty. He played young Indiana Jones in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. He was in My Private Idaho with Keanu Reeves. Great movie. He was in Sneakers. Great movie. Silent Tongue, which I think was released after he died, and then a movie filmed in 1993 that was released way later, called Dark Blood. He played Boy, but also posthumous or whatever that word's called. Television-wise, he was in 21 episodes of a show called Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. Then he did a mini-series, a couple episodes of this and that, and a television film. And then, music videos, Stand By Me, Benny E. King, and then Breaking the Girl, Red Hot Chili Peppers. He played himself. He was himself in it. But yeah, River Phoenix, the older brother of Joaquin Phoenix, amongst other people. He didn't have just those. They were just those. But he died of a drug overdose or some nonsense. I can't remember, but back in 1993. He would have had an amazing career ahead of him, I believe. But, whatever. And then Jason Presson didn't do a whole lot. Explorers was like his sixth film. Sixth film, yeah. Other stuff, I mean, I don't really recognize him from any of these. I mean, he did an episode of Twilight Zone. Um, yeah, he was in Gremlins 2, the new batch. Um, did a episode of Rugrats. So, he had a huge career. Amanda Peterson, who plays the love interest, which is a lost storyline in this whole fucking thing, of Laurie Swenson in this, and I'll get to that in a minute. Again, not a huge career. I was looking through this list, not a whole lot of standouts, other than the fact that she was in Explorers and Doogie Howser, MD. So, boom, there you go. The next two are well known. First up is Robert. I want to say it's Picardo, but I think that might be wrong. Anyways, he's been in a bunch of stuff. He's done a lot of stuff with Joe Dante. He was in Explorers. He was in Inner Space. He was in The Burbs. He was in Gremlins 2. He was in Manatee. Worked with him later too, I think. Anyways, but he also was in that time. It was Back to School, great movie. Bates Motel, which was a television movie of Psycho. He was also in Amazon Women of the Moon, which is also a Joe Dante movie. I forgot that one was in there. Dead Heat, Loverboy, Total Recall, Wagons East, which is one of the worst movies ever made. Revenge of the Nerds 4, Star Trek First Contact, where he played emergency medical hologram, which, by the way, comes back to an amazing thing. He was the doctor in Star Trek. What's the one where they get lost? Voyager. He plays the doctor, who is a hologram. Isn't that fucking cool? Anyways, I thought that was cool. Whatever. He's done a lot of things. Television wise, he's done a bunch of stuff. He's done voices for different stuff. He's done so many things. I'm not going to go through all the whole thing, but I thought the connection, or the thing that the fact that he was in a Star Trek movie as a hologram doctor, then later was a hologram doctor on a television show from Star Trek. It blew my mind. I mean, I don't think I knew that ahead of time when I was looking this up, and I was like, well, that's fucking rad. But yeah, it's Robert Picardo. I could be saying that wrong. I don't know. And last is Dick Miller. Anyhow. By the way, Dick Miller also did a few movies with Joe Dante. Like I said, Joe Dante likes to work with a lot of the same people. So he was in Explorers. He was in a couple other ones, right? I want to say he was in Gremlins 2, Amazon Women of the Moon on the Moon. He was in The Burbs. Yeah, a couple of them. Yeah. It wasn't a couple of those. But he's done a lot of stuff. I mean, his career started fucking in 1955 with Apache Woman, and ran all the way to 2015. I believe he's dead, right? Yeah, died last year. But he's been in a lot of things. And you see him, you'll be like, oh yeah, that guy. He's been in a lot of stuff. He was in the TV show The Flash, the OG one. Wow, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So yeah, that's that's Dick Miller. He's been in a lot of stuff, and he plays a very small role in this movie. Okay, so Explorers, for the people who don't know, shame on you. You can watch this currently on Amazon Prime. Where the fuck is my phone? Hold on, let me see my notes real quick. Uh, notes. Where did I watch this? Amazon Prime. Boom, bitch. So yeah, I watched it on there. And it was only like I could have bought it on iTunes. It was like $12 or $10, something like that. But I had already hit that button. I found it actually after I found it on iTunes after I watched it because I was looking for something else for another month. I'm not gonna tell you about what it is yet. Mainly because right now I can't think of what it was. I don't think it panned out. Anyways, it doesn't matter. I watched it on Amazon. And it's awesome. I love this movie so much. It goes from being a really cool science fiction fantasy of these three kids that discover this technology, which I'll get to in a minute. Then it turns into this fucking weird space thingy. Anyways, I'll get there. So, real quick, this takes place in the Washington, D.C. suburbs. Not really specified of what city it is, but it's around there. They talk about it a little bit. Two good friends, Ben and Wolfgang, have been friends for a long time. From what you get this in this this movie itself, they've known each other for a long, long time, and their families are friends or some nonsense like that. Anyhow, one day, one night, Ben has this dream where he's flying through clouds over a vast city-like circuit board, usually after falling asleep watching old sci-fi films. And this one happens to be the War of the Worlds. He remembers this circuit board and he draws it and he gives it to Wolfgang, who then basically runs a test on it and figures out that he can make it work using a simulation of the motherboard of the circuit board. And when he does that, they create something that is it creates something. There's a lot that happens in the beginning of this movie that brings the characters together because you get introduced to Darren Woods, played by Jason Presson, or Pearson. I'm not actually too sure how to say his name. He basically stops a fight that's going the wrong way for Ben, who's getting his ass whipped. And they end up kind of buddying up, and they end up going to Wolfgang's house, where Wolfgang shows him what he did, and as part of that, they accidentally cause some damage, where this thing they created is punches a hole through a bunch of books, a bookshelf, a wall, and into a brick wall, and they're like, "What the hell?" The next time they get together, Wolfgang has worked on it. He's perfected it, air quotes. He's able to shift the design or the outside of it so they can make it visible. And it's an orb, and he is showing them all about how he designed a 3D rendering of his lab, the basement of his parents' house. And he can move it around in that space using the simulation. But then his cat jumps on the keyboard. It goes haywire, tears up the basement. They have the Darren and Ben have to run before his parents lose their minds, and he says there was an experiment gone wrong. Boom, boom, boom. Then they decide they're going to test this. Wolfgang gets trapped in the bubble when they're out in the on the hill, and he finds out that you can't breathe inside of it because it's completely airtight. But you have no inertia when you're in it, so you can travel as fast as possible without killing yourself because there's no G forces on you. And it's basically a near limitless distance and speed can be generated for this thing, and they can use it. So then they design a plan to build something they can all sit in, put the force field around, and then use it to fly around. Well, they do this. When they're doing this, shit goes awry, and they start flying into space. Well, Wolfgang has got an idea to unhook the computer to reboot it. Well, that almost kills them. They land, and then they're gonna tweak a little bit with better oxygen because they run out, and better supplies, which really doesn't come into effect because they don't travel that long. They do travel far. Next time they're in it, again, it gets hijacked. It goes awry, but then it brings them into space, and they get pulled through like a fast traveling blah blah blah, and they run into a spaceship, or they get caught by a spaceship. They go on there, and this is where it gets fucking weird because it goes into this super bizarre thing where they're getting tracked by the alien life forms on there. They get separated. There's this big, like, almost obstacle course type thing they're working their way through. Wolfgang gets separated from Ben. Ben then runs into Darren again, and then they meet the first of the aliens, who speaks English but talks in what sounds like movie clips and television clips. Turns out that's exactly what it is. He brings him to Wolfgang and another alien, a female alien, who have been sitting there talking, and then they explain. He briefly explains that they've learned English and all about Earth from television transmissions, and there's a performance by the alien, who, by the way, is also played by Robert Picardo. I don't know how to say that name. Who is featured early in the film at the drive-in that I skipped over, but it doesn't matter. And then they get explained to them that, they wanted to come to Earth, but they couldn't because of the diseases. That's why they had to clean, like, basically disinfect him when they got on the ship for the first time. And they are hearing all about it, and all of a sudden another ship approaches that's much bigger, and it turns out that it's the alien's dad and their two little kids who stole their dad's ship and has been fucking with Earthlings, trying to get him to learn who they are, because that's what kids do when they do things like steal their parents' car, and they get in trouble. And then they, as they're getting ready to leave, the female alien gives Ben this jewel that basically would let them reconnect. And they get sent back. The bubble turns off right above water. They crash. They climb out of it. But on their way there, Lori has this dream about them and gets out and follows it to where they crash land and sees them. And then the next day in school, which is a really weird way to end this, because I feel like they start to have this dream in school because Ben's looking at this jewel thing that the alien gave him. And then there's a shared dream again with all of them, which I skipped over earlier, but there's a shared dream earlier in the movie with Wolfgang, Darren, and Ben when they finally see the circuit board again and get the drawing down correctly, which then teaches them how to build a machine that can create oxygen for them. I skipped over that part, but whatever. And then, so they have this shared dream, but then Lori's in it, and her and Ben hold hands and kiss, while Darren and Wolfgang are behind them watching creepily, which is really strange. But that's how the movie ends, them flying over this Circuit City with a really complicated setup, and then that's really it. That's how the movie ends. I explained this movie terribly, but it's really fun. You should watch it. It is a slice of the 80s, so be prepared not to be impressed by some stuff. And the acting's not great, but it's a fun movie. It's very choppy at best. They did that to save time, I'm pretty sure. And like I said, there's some plot stuff in it that they sort of kind of explore, but they only use parts of it to tell the story later on, because Darren can tell a father who's mad at him. It doesn't matter. But anyways, there's this big thing, and like, whatever. I'm not going to get into it. It's just super fun, and I think everyone should watch it. That's just me, though. Whatever. Anyways, that's it for this week's episode of The Awesome with Cody. Again, we were talking about Explorers. And tune in next week when I talk about Tron and Tron Legacy, which are both on Disney Plus, because I just looked at my notes and it said that, even though I own both on iTunes. I haven't watched them on Disney Plus, so boom, I'll watch them there. The reason I'm doing both is mainly because I'm going to watch both anyways. But I think there's some really cool correlations between the two nifty things they do in there. So anyways, that's it for this week's episode, everybody. As usual, I'm your host, Cody, and at the end of this, I always say, let's be awesome.